everyone, it's David here from Beyond the Kingdoms, coming in with my first Disney World event review for 2020. This year's International Festival of the Arts at Epcot. Now, as some of you may know, this is my favorite event at Epcot. It's very well balanced across activities, food, and entertainment. And I think it's just the right size that it doesn't take away too much from the year-round Epcot offerings. But the festival this year has seen some pretty big changes thanks to some big construction projects. And Disney has also debuted 3 new films around the park, marking the beginning of the massive Epcot transformation. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into this year's Festival of the Arts review. Today's episode of Beyond the Kingdoms is proudly sponsored by Deep Dive Threads. Their soft graphic apparel takes your fandom to a whole new level. Stand out in the crowd in comfort with the hundreds of available designs for the whole family. With fresh designs added every Friday, there's always something new to discover. Just visit deepdivethreads.store to start shopping today and use the promo code MAGIC20 to get 20% off your next purchase. Deep Dive Threads, graphic apparel that's as unique as your fandom. I want to start off today's review with a look at the 3 new films that have now debuted at Epcot. For the record, even though Disney has premiered these new movies at the start of Festival of the Arts, they will be permanent additions to the park and offered year-round. Now I'm going to work backwards a little bit and start off in France. Disney has decided to add a Beauty and the Beast SingAlong, which is in the same theater that has been screening Impressions de France since the park opened. First of all, I will say that the new gallery in the pre-show area to the theater is fantastic, and it focuses on the performing arts. Of course, there is a central display showing off some props that inspired the newly designed characters in the live-action version of Beauty and the Beast. But what I really enjoy here is that there are objects here that are not tied to just Disney films. For example, you'll find a few objects used in the stage production of Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis. I also love that local companies get in on this as well, such as the Orlando Ballet, who have loaned out a few costumes used in the ballet version of Sleeping Beauty. Now, shifting gears, the sing-along inside the theater is a little bit bizarre if you ask me. It's a 15-minute reduction of the original animated film, highlighting favorite songs. But there's a big twist here. The film is narrated by Mrs. Potts, and she explains that behind the scenes in what we saw in the original film, LeFou was working his magic to help pair up Belle and the Beast. He kind of acts like a secret Cupid and double agent. I just personally think that another Beauty and the Beast offering is a little bit of overkill. We already have a great restaurant and elaborate meet and greet over at the Magic Kingdom, and a full stage production at Hollywood Studios. I personally would have enjoyed a Hunchback sing-along instead. I think the story is just as iconic, showcases an important French landmark of course, and features just as good of a soundtrack. So in the end, I have some mixed feelings about this. Yes, I know that kids who love Beauty and the Beast will enjoy this. I just would have preferred a different animated film. Now, the next film that debuted in World Showcase this past week is Canada Far and Wide. Now, this I feel is a bit of an improvement from the France update. I could be mistaken, but I was almost certain that Disney previously announced that Canada and China would get upgrades to their screens. But I guess it looks like here in Canada, that is not true. This new film is narrated by Canadian actors Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara. Now, unlike the previous Martin Short version, the two comedians do not get carried away with over-the-top cheesy jokes, which I prefer. The script is very concise now, taking guests through a journey of the country, starting in the province of Nova Scotia, then working west to British Columbia, before ending in the northern regions of the Yukon Territory. I think the choice of structuring the film geographically from east to west will keep the younger guests focused. In some ways, it feels more informational than it used to be, quickly highlighting major cities and landmarks. The film also certainly focuses more on the natural beauty than anything else. And I especially love that the classic songs from both the original and 2007 update are still kept in. Overall, this is a solid update and well worth a stop for. And this takes us to our third and final new film at Epcot, Over in the Land. Awesome Planet is a fantastic addition to Future World. This is the one film of the three that I think will please the widest audience. In the pre-show area, you'll get to once again appreciate that carpet mural that's been left almost completely intact from when this theater used to screen Symbiosis. Awesome Planet is narrated by actor Ty Burrell, who most of you will recognize as Phil Dunphy from ABC's Modern Family. The writers clearly used the fact that Burrell is known for playing a real estate agent on the ABC TV show, and he somewhat showcases our planet as the perfect place to settle down. Now, I wondered how serious things would get as the story went along. And indeed, things started to shift about halfway through, warning us about things like climate change and the importance of taking care of our planet. But again, this is masterfully done and well balanced. The film is light and fast-paced, which will keep the kids engaged, but still very educational, without getting too dismal and dark. And I especially love the in-theater effects. You'll get smells like you do on Soarin', lightning flashes, and a few little more touches. The good news is, it's not like Muppet Vision or PhilharMagic, where the effects become gimmicky and are meant to shock you. This is the perfect example of how Disney can still change things at Epcot and keep the original mission of the park alive. Now, I've talked more than enough on these new films, so let's actually get into the meat and potatoes of this fantastic event. If you're a creative soul like me and enjoy both the visual and performing arts, you'll love this event. If you've been before, 2020 doesn't bring too many big changes or additions, but construction around the park has definitely impacted things. Overall, this feels much like it did last year in 2019. Now, I will definitely cover food more extensively later this week in my Foodie Friday video, but I briefly want to touch base on the food studios. These are the 12 food booths dotted around World Showcase that, like at all Epcot festivals, serves up delicious and small dishes to enjoy. This year, there are no new food studios added and only a handful of new dishes. It seemed that the two Asian food studios offered the most dynamic new items. But I think some of the best dishes are returning favorites like the Frangipan cake at Pop Eats, the sushi donut in Japan, and that beef Wellington over at the Artist Table in America. But don't worry, this week's Foodie Friday video will cover my favorite new dishes of the festival. Now, in terms of returning activities that Disney fans love, I want to briefly talk about the Animation Academy. This has been moved this year to the American Gardens Theater. I assume that in the future, activities such as Animation Academy will take place in the stunning new pavilion inside World Celebration. But for now, there's no official festival center and things are just scattered about everywhere. And there's some pros and cons to this. Since the theater is used at night for the Broadway concert, there are only 2 sessions of this offering at 12:30 and 1:30 p.m. But since this is a much bigger space, there's no issue in just walking up just minutes before the workshop begins. In the past, you had to sign up very early in the day to score a spot. Now, it's a little more difficult doing this on a clipboard, but the outdoor setting is refreshing at this time of year, provided that there's no rain. If you're an animation fan, I highly recommend doing this. It's absolutely free and a great activity for everyone. And if you want to go that extra mile, do the ink and paint workshop as well. If you want to learn more about this, I wrote a complete review of this from last year's festival. But this brings me to my next and final point on activities. This year, I noticed more small-scale activities throughout the different markets around World Showcase. New this year is a spin art activity located in between Japan and Morocco. There's also a make-your-own glass activity in Germany, and a paint-your-own mask opportunity inside the Italy pavilion. Most of these are cheaper than the workshops, and they don't require reservations, so it's nice that you can just walk up and do these. It's something that I think will keep the younger guest engaged at the event. Now, the final and best aspect of this festival is definitely entertainment. You guys know that I love the Disney on Broadway concert. This year, I got to see one of my personal favorites, Gavin Lee, who originated the role of Bert in the stage production of Mary Poppins, both in London and on Broadway. Now, the smaller scale shows are just as good, however, this year, construction has really shuffled things around. And this is an aspect of the festival that I really didn't enjoy this year. The living statues this year have moved to Future World East, right next to the new temporary Mouse Gear location en route to Mission Space. The performers are just as fun as before. But this location feels like a little bit of an afterthought and disconnected from everything else. I know it's probably a temporary location just for 2020, and it's not really a big deal, but it's one example of how the park feels like it's in a state of transition right now. Now, the musical acts, Art Defying Gravity, and Visual Art and Performance have all moved to the front of World Showcase Lagoon. Again, this may seem like a wise move, mainly because it's located right in the spot where most people will pass through. But I noticed that the setup means that the sun will be in your eye for most of the day while watching. Again, it's not a huge deal and I understand why this has moved here, but it's funny how these little subtle changes can just affect things a little bit. Now, all of these smaller shows are still really good and worth watching, but my veterans who have come to this festival before might get slowly thrown off, so just keep that in mind. So there you have it, my friends, my 2020 review of Festival of the Arts, now taking place every day at Epcot until February 24th. I know that some people want to see Epcot these days without a festival, but let's face it, almost the entire year is filled with some sort of event. But this festival is the best of the bunch in my opinion. I think it's the underappreciated Epcot festival and still young enough that it doesn't bring in the same level of crowds as Flower and Garden and Food and Wine. If you're heading to the event this year, stay tuned for my top tips for Festival of the Arts coming very soon, and my Foodie Friday video this week that will highlight my favorite new dishes at the event. And my Patreon members will get a special extended edition of this on the very same day. Once again, I want to thank Deep Dive Threads for sponsoring this week's video, and if you're looking for some unique and fun shirts to wear on your next Disney trip, I promise you'll find some great items here that will definitely stand out from the rest. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and remember, if you can dream it, you can do it.